Okay, I'm Chris Diamond. I run a company called Hogfish Studios. We do web design development. And what I was going to demo today is it's going to be really quick because it's a super easy plugin and it's maybe useful. It's something that I hate, but I'll show you how to add it to your website if you want. Now, I don't know if any of you, has anybody ever been to a website and you go there and maybe it's, I find mostly on shopping sites, and you go there and it looks like something really good, and you go to the site and a big pop-up window comes up and it won't let you look at the site until you put your email address in. You all see those, right? And I hate those, but I'm going to show you how to put one on your site. Because, you know, so I use a program. This is my desktop server program, and you know, if you're not familiar with that, I use this to test themes and plugins out without having to do them on the web. This actually runs a WordPress server on my computer. If you haven't used this program yet, it's really cool because not only can you do WordPress installs, and it's super quick to do a WordPress install, and it's you know, I use it just for kind of experimenting. You could use it to develop on and then move that site to a live site. But not only does it do WordPress, you can install. There must be like 300 programs that you can install and check out, and a lot of them, like I don't know, I'm giving you an ad for them, but since we're here, there was like a really good one that I ended up using in my business, which is a help desk system, where my users can go to a certain web page and put in some information, and it creates a help desk ticket for them. And then I assign it to somebody, and then that person takes care of it, and I can follow the progress. But I found that on AMP. So if you get a chance, AMP runs on Mac, it runs on Windows, it runs on Linux. So if you get a chance, check it out. It's a good way to test out software. And as you can see, I have a bunch of WordPress installs here. These are different. What I do is if I see a theme I like, I'll install it here. I'll mess around with it. I'll see if it's easy, if it works good, and if it is, then I know to use it. But I leave the demos here in case I need to go back and try something else. So anyway, this is one install of WordPress on my desktop server. And nice thing about this is because it runs on your desktop, you don't have to use like a secure password. So mine is admin and the password is pass. Would I do that on a live site? No. Here. Okay, so the plugin that I'm going to show you is called. Let me find it, please. It's called Display Pop. So basically, y'all know how to install a plugin. If you don't, see Carol after and she'll give you an hour tutorial for free. So we'll install the plugin. Yeah, it's in the repository. So I activate it, and if I go here, now I have the settings for it. So here's the settings, and this is going to do exactly what we talked about before. It's going to pop up a window. You can choose to make it where they can't get rid of that window unless they put some information in. But it's nice if you're having a sale, or maybe you're having a special, or you've just written you've written a paper that you're going to give away for free, so you want to collect email addresses. It's good for that. So now the first setting is show pop-up after how many seconds. So you can have it time delayed. So once they get to your site and you're on there for 30 seconds, then it pops up. Okay, so that's somebody who's already engaged in your site. So when you bring the pop-up and maybe you collect an email address or whatever information you want to do, it doesn't change up to 1 second. And you can also tell it they have to visit 5 pages before it'll pop up. So we're going to say 1 page. You can pick which page it pops up on. We're just going to leave it on the whole site. It's got cookies, so So if you don't want, if they come back to your site, you can say within 14 days if they come back, don't pop up. But as long as they have cookies turned on, then as long as they have cookies turned on, then after 14 days, they won't see the pop-up for another 14 days. It's 7 days now, but you can set it for whatever. I would set it for 30 days probably. So I'm going to put it in test mode just so it pops up on every page. So then you come here and you put your title. Pop up, and you can have a subtitle. Oops. That's the English spelling. Old English. You can have a subtitle, and then you can have a description. And then you can put some privacy info if you want. And you can do a custom style sheet, and they have a pretty nice set of style sheets here. So we'll use this, let's use this one here. Okay, and then I click Save Changes. Now there is a way you can disable it for mobile phones, which is good, so it doesn't pop up if they're on a mobile device. And there's a force submit. That's the ones we hate, where you have to put something in there, otherwise it won't close. So now I put this information in, and go to Save Changes. And just like magic, if I look at the site, hey, there it is. You got a nice pop-up. You'll see this one has a little X in the window. And there is a way to connect this with a contact form. So if you wanted to collect some information, you could do that as well. It does, and it. Yeah. Oh, I could be wrong. So maybe it doesn't. But I looked at several of these, and there are ones that do that. And the other, so that's one pop-up, and that's kind of nice because if you wanted to bring some attention to your site, if something special you're having, that works really well. The other one I found that I really liked is one called Fancy Box pop-up. And I'm not going to go into the setup of that because it's a little complicated the way I did it. It kind of does the same thing, but you can see on this one, I integrated it with Contact Form 7. So if they say request a call, if they click on it, it brings up a pop-up where they can put their information in and hit send. So that one is, I think it's called Fancy Bot. It's fancy something. So I found that one, and I like this a lot better because if you're going to ask people for information, it's nice just to pop up and then get out of the way. Okay, so that's it. Any questions about those? Anybody think that'll come in handy on their sites, or? No? I just hate the ones that you can't close. I don't. Well, like I said, if you were having a special or something, you know, maybe you're having a sale or. You could.
You know, what's funny is I had a client ask me for one just like this, and my first reaction was, "Woo, how much that?" So I started doing a little bit of research. It's like pop-ups are coming back and again, if they're done right and they're not as intrusive. If they can easily be closed, and the one that I did had a very transparent background, so you could kind of still see beneath it, and it was easily gotten rid of, and it didn't continue in that. And the research I was finding is that those are converting these days, and so pop-ups are not as evil as I thought they were. And they're doing That's not this. It's the right way and the wrong way to do it. There's a lot of sense that make you
Yeah, when I get to those, yeah, because I get them on, I'm signed up for all those, like, what is it, Groupon type things. And a lot of times I'll get, not Groupon doesn't do it, but there's other companies that do that, and it'll show, hey, iPad case, $9.99. I'm like, that looks really cool, and I click on it to see what it is, and then they'll come up with that pop-up, and won't let you close that pop-up unless you put your email address.
Facebook has
But this one is, like I said, this one is nice if you just want to put a message.
So where do you actually drop in the content? Is that into a widget? Or stuff?
No, it's just right in the plug-in settings.
Oh, so you can actually just drop it into
I don't know if it takes me to tell you the truth.
description.
It uses content inside.
Right. So I know that this will use contact if you click on this force submit. This is the thing we hate where you have to submit to do it.
Side by side.
Right. I haven't done that. I just came across this the other day and just tried it out. So I haven't done it with a form. I like I said, I like it just to put a message up. Hey, this is our new website. Look at it. Hey, I haven't sale this week, and then nothing closes. So if you, it just comes up, and like I said, I set it for not to close unless you. Oh, that's right. Now that I think about it, there's a widget. It creates a widget. So if you have a contact form 7 or a gravity forms, you just drag it into that widget, and then it shows up again. Now that, but so yeah, so it's kind of handy. You can do that. Now I think about it when I was playing with it, you can do that even if you don't do a force submit. So it comes in kind of handy. I might use it again, but I like the other fancy pop-up. Because that one you can have that one you can have triggered by a link or a button or whatever. This one just comes up after a certain amount. I mean, it might be good because you have the option to wait so many seconds or so many page clicks. So you might put something like that, are you enjoying our site? Let us know, or something like that.
The one that I have, you can put it on certain pages only,
This will be on certain pages.
and certain posts and stuff, so.
So there are some uses. Just don't do the one where you have to put information in to close it. Oh, I went back and changed it, so you can do that one where it doesn't even have a close box.
Really screw users off.
Actually, that might be handy if your site's in development. Because then you can have your site in the background. Just, hey, our site will be up soon. Yeah. But yeah, that's it. Any other questions?
What was it called?
It was called Just Let Pop-Up, I think. So,
Can you go to ArizonaPages.org and go to WPA's menu system and do the suggested plugin demonstration. All right, did everyone see how to get there? WPAZ, and then it suggests a plugin demonstration. So this is the form that we have on the website for you to tell us. This is the form that we have on the website for you to tell us what plugins that you would like to see demonstrated. Now, don't feel like that you have to be the one to present on it, because as you will see, it says, are you knowledgeable about this and would like to present? You can select no. If you just want to, if you're interested in something, you don't know much about it, you want to put it out there, and let's see if someone else here in the group would be willing to put it, to present on it, that is perfectly okay. You could certainly try and do that. It would be helpful to actually have a specific though, because there's so many different slider plugins that if you say I just need a slider plugin, well, there's so many. So it would really be helpful to tell us exactly which plugin it is. So do a little bit of research, tell us which plugin it is. We currently have 2 submissions for plugins that someone would like to have reviewed. One is BuddyPress, which BuddyPress is worthy of entire buddy camps these days. So there's no way that someone's going to be able to present BuddyPress in 20 minutes. However, I do want to put that out there, are there BuddyPress people in the house who might be willing to do a quick overview for a full-blown session one time? Chuck, you're playing with BuddyPress, aren't you? All right. BBPress? Okay. So maybe I may hit you up for a full-blown session. That's just not, BuddyPress is too big for what this little plugin demo idea is for. The next one, the next suggestion I have on here was someone asked about Max Galleria. So is anyone, and is this the one that Seth mentioned on the, okay, it is the one that Seth mentioned. All right. So Seth obviously isn't here, and the whole point of this doesn't mean, like, whoever agrees to do this doesn't need to know it right now. The whole point is you have a month to install this plugin, test it out, play with it, see what it does, drive the car a little bit, and then come in 20 minutes, show us next time what you learned. We're not going to quiz you on the change log and what kind of bugs are in the, I mean, it's not that kind of presentation. It's like, here's how I used it, and here's what I kind of thought about it. So you do not need to be an expert on it. I don't know. I've never even.
I tried putting it in the site this week.
And
everything went okay. Started. So I don't
all right.
I'm missing something.
So Seth. He did. He raved about it on there. Yeah.
I tried it on one of my sites, and it put little carrots for each photo, and you feel like troubleshooting it.
So we had 2 people who like install. So it must be a plugin that is fairly powerful. That there may be some configuration options that you have to kind of learn about. Was there? Okay. Yeah, really.
How we get him to come do it.
Exactly. Come. We'll have him. Everyone hates your plugin, Seth. Tell us what it is that you like about it. Is anyone here willing to take that for next week or next month and play with it and see? We'll do it? Okay. What's your name again? Justin. Okay. So Justin is going to do, I'm going to write your name down just a sec, so you will be cool. And he's going to take it and play with it, and he's going to give us a little demo next time. But now it's not too early to add your own other plugins. So other things that you would like to see demoed, be sure and come to this website and go to that area and tell us what other kind of plugins you want demonstrated. And then next month, after Justin does it, we'll pick the following month's one. Okay? All right, so our presenter, we've actually got 2 different sessions, the same presenter presenting both. Felix is going to present a little bit on the basics. It came up? Okay, maybe that update helped. Felix is going to present on our first part of the session. It's going to be the basics of hosting. Like, what is it that we, as WordPress people, what do we need to know about hosting? What's important about hosting? what kind of things do we need to look for in a good host, and what is the host's job? Like, what's their job, what's our job? So Felix is going to just kind of give us a hosting 101 lowdown.
I gave up.
You guys hear me? All right. Hello. A little about me. I'm Felix Goradishner. I speak fluent Russian. I've been in the States for a very long time now, so that's why I have no accent. I've been a software dev for many moons, kind of started as a young kid even. I work for GoDaddy, like I mentioned earlier, and I'm the software development manager for WordPress initiatives. So what that basically means is I care for the 2+ million WordPress sites that we run. And that's my responsibility. And I'm going to try to do my best to give you a completely unfiltered view. This is not going to be a GoDaddy pitch or anything like that. I'm just going to talk about what is hosting and what it means for you. All right, so I have some prizes to give away, and my colleagues are going to help. I have these really special fancy business cards that didn't get delivered today, so we made these. We're going to be giving away free admission to WordCamp of your choosing. So just email me, there's a code on the bottom, and we'll buy a ticket for you to go to any WordCamp you want. So can someone tell me what is hosting? Yes. Where you keep your website? Yes. All right, that's right. So there's a bunch of different types of hosting. We're going to go into each one of them. So shared hosting. What is shared hosting? Okay. Perfect. That's exactly what I'm going to talk about here. So we're going to call it the gym membership model. And what that means is you have shared resources. The gym is meant to sell to everybody, and only a certain number of people really use it. That's the honest truth. So that's why sometimes, during peak times, it gets a little slower. During regular times, at night, it's a little faster, things like that. It's really meant to put your sites on, and it's the economy option. So there's a bunch of companies that service this market. GoDaddy and our brand, so we have Media Temple, Endurance, so Bluehost, HostGator, iPage, they have 53 of them, and United Internet, which is primarily one-on-one. Those are the top players, and we'll talk a little bit about them in a little bit. Again, it's the economy option of the hosting model. So what you have is a lot of things. When you go to their sites, you'll see strike-through pricing. They'll give you discounts all the time. Something to really watch out for when you're looking at shared hosting is what the renewal rate's going to be. So they like to sell it to you for a couple bucks, and then the next year when you renew and you've been in the product, it's going to have a different price. All of the sites describe what that price is, but just something to keep in mind. It is good at everything and good at nothing at the same time. So that's the honest truth. So shared hosting is meant to run your WordPress, your Joomla, your Drupal, your Magento, all in the same place. It is not tuned for any one application. So while it can run WordPress and some shared hostings run it quite well, just keep in mind it's not really optimized for a WordPress experience. It's a combination of different things. So the question was, is it because of the software that the server is running? So the server is really set up on probably PHP and possibly a couple of languages. So some do Ruby, some do Perl, some do Python, and it's really meant to do all of those things, kind of all in one. And we'll talk a little bit more. Yes?
I was gonna, it's also probably because there's a low barrier to entry, so there's a lot of inefficient, outdated, slow installations of everything all over the server at once.
Yes. So this is, in shared hosting, it's really unstructured data. If you've ever dealt with enterprise type stuff, it's a lot of data sitting on the server. Hosts don't typically actually know what is out there. There's, you have the ability to drop your own WordPress install. It'll be WordPress 3.0 sitting next to a 3.1, next to a 3.2. Every account that you get is really, you get one bucket. So if you install 5 copies of WordPress, they all share the same bucket of resources, of memory, of everything like that. And then on top of that, since they're all in the same bucket, if one runs into a problem, they're all affected. So something to keep in mind. You're going to see the term unlimited everywhere. Don't trust it. From any host, doesn't matter. There's always fine print on what unlimited means, but in this space, unlimited is what people expect. Obviously, in a gym, you can't use unlimited resources. But it gets you as close as possible for what most people need. And then there is a point at which you outgrow and you go into the next options that we'll talk about. It's excellent at general security, and we'll talk about security in a little bit. So it's meant to provide security, again, for your Joomla, your Drupal, your WordPress, and they can't tune specifically for your WordPress or your other application. So it does a general swath across the entire set of what people could run on their hosting account. You're going to get a choice of Windows or Linux with some hosts. Do not pick Windows, unless you have a very specific reason to do so. There are sites, ASP sites, ASP.NET sites, there are specific uses. If those terms didn't mean anything to you, pick Linux. It doesn't matter what you run on your workstation. You may have never heard of Linux before. It's not going to matter. Just pick it, your WordPress will run better, and the other sites that you're going to run are just going to run better. That's the honest truth of it. Windows, again, is great for certain applications, but if you're not in that space, you're actually going to hinder your performance, hinder your resources, just by running Windows. And all of them offer their form of WordPress automatic installers, one-click installers, just to make it easy to get started with any application that is offered. And you'll see things like Installatron and Fantastico and hosting connections, different applications like that will help you install your applications really quickly. So those are a really good way to get started once you are in a shared hosting. So as far as the competition of who does these sites, who wants to tell me how many sites they think GoDaddy properties host in the shared hosting space?
7 million.
7 million. That's really close. So 7.3 is, these are Netcraft numbers. I have better numbers internally, but this is, I'm going to compare apples to apples across the list. So, yeah. All right, how about for endurance? What was it? Ooh, 5.8. So across all their brands, they're about 5.8. And how about for United? 3 million. It's 4.2. So in this space, there's really these 3 big companies. I'm not just saying it because I work there. This is really the landscape. There's about 3,000 different hosting providers that consider themselves part of this space. What we call a long tail effect comes into play. So this is a chart of 3,000, and I clipped it at any host that hosts over 1,000 websites, because there's 383 that host less than 1,000 websites. You do not want to host your site. If you don't pick GoDaddy or Endurance or United, you can pick someone else by all means, but do not pick someone that is running 100 sites out of their garage. That is not where you want your business to run. So pick someone that has a pretty good reputation, good reviews, good support, all of those things. So just something to keep in mind. Any questions on shared hosting?
That number includes the 7.3 million. Does that include what media sample?
Yes.
Owned by GoDaddy?
Yes. All right. So there's 2 primary types of shared hosting that exist out there these days. There's the single server model, and you'll typically see cPanel or Plesk as the control panels on those. Some have proprietary ones, so Endurance has, I think, eDeck and some other custom ones. GoDaddy used to have a custom one. We've switched to cPanel and Plesk. And then you end up getting grid or clusters configuration. So Media Temple, GoDaddy has them, and I think there may be 1 or 2 other hosts that have them. And they're typically custom control panels. cPanel and Parallels haven't quite gotten into the grid environment. So let's talk about what this really means for you. So the single server, it is a single point of failure. What that means is you're going to run your database, your files, and your website all from the same place. Now that means it's going to be fast, because you're going to be using local disk, local resources, local everything. But if that one component goes away, your site is effectively down. And then you have to rely on backups, the host bringing it back up, all sorts of different things. It is the predominant model within shared hosting. It's primarily single servers. The grid cluster gives you a different approach. Sometimes it's a little bit more expensive. So Media Temple, for example, has grid offerings. GoDaddy has in our legacy product. We've actually started to switch more to single server models with some twists. But fundamentally, the grid is distributing your website across multiple servers. There's going to be a shared file system, so it's not really relying on any one of the servers. It's going to be a shared database server, so it's not relying on the same box. The host can pull a box out for maintenance, do work on it, put it back in, your site never takes any damage.
It's like the RAID 5.
Kind of. And in front of it, there's a device called the load balancer that basically sends your traffic to any one of the servers behind it. And it ranges from however many servers the host feels is appropriate to manage the load. But those are primarily the different models that are out there.
On a single server, there's a lot of redundancy.
Depends. So redundancy, there is certainly redundancy in the hard drives. As far as beyond that, it's typically just RAID 5 or RAID 6. I mean, they're enterprise servers typically, so they're meant to be able to pull a power supply live without turning the box off. You can swap out memory, possibly swap out those drives, but fundamentally, it's still one compute. All right. So jumping into VPS, who can tell me what VPS stands for? Virtual private server, exactly. So this is going to be equated to an apartment complex. You're effectively in a place, you have your own unit that you can, of resources, you have your own bedroom, but then there's that shared pool and gym and other services like that. So your server can expand and contract a little bit, but realistically you have a small piece of space that you can use for yourself. There's a lot of companies that play in this, a lot of companies that do shared hosting, and then some new ones that have cropped up that have done really amazing things like DigitalOcean that give you VPS containers for cheap. The catch with this is it's great at what you make it. This is not going to give you the same type of experience as a shared hosting provider in most cases. You're going to have to configure it in some way. So just keep in mind, it's one of those things where if you outgrow a shared hosting spot, you may need to move up to this, but at the same time, you may also need to hire a developer if you're not or something. It's good at general security. Again, because you control the server itself, the hosting provider will only get you secure to that network card on that server. Beyond that, it's your responsibility. When you're buying these, you're going to be limited by RAM, storage, CPU, disk. There's a lot of different parameters, so you're going to have to figure out what you actually want out of your site. Because if you're limited by these factors, it's not going to go beyond that. You're going to have to pay more. And VPSs are typically more expensive. DigitalOcean has done a great job of coming in at the very entry-level space, but you're still going to want to slide that slider beyond it as your site grows.
There are all SSDs.
We're getting there. There is certainly a lot of solid-state disks that are coming around in this space. With that, you do get better performance, but it's really all about how they encapsulate that space. Yes?
With VPS system, they mostly offer VPN.
So with a VPS, you will always get one IP, and then you'll have the opportunity to buy additional ones, in most cases. And can someone tell me why you would want additional IPs?
SSL certs.
SSL certs, it's not a requirement anymore for an SSL cert to run to have a dedicated IP. You may exclude China if you don't get one, but that's the cost of doing business. But fundamentally, you're going to want a dedicated IP in order to run an SSL cert. Some people also feel it gives them some better SEO juice. I don't know that anyone has the right answer on that other than Google, and they're not talking. Control panel is an option. Some of the VPS containers will offer you cPanel or Flask or a custom, or you can install one yourself. There are several free and open source ones out there. So if you're the type of user that would really prefer shared hosting, but you've just grown beyond that, you can buy a cPanel. You're going to have to pay a couple bucks a month, most likely, to get it, but you'll have that familiar feel as your shared hosting. Is that a question?
Our servers physically housed, are they Fort Knox? Are they protected from solar flares and things like that?
Yeah.
Or how does that work?
So physically, servers are in giant data centers, and the data centers themselves have all the redundancy in the world. Every hosting provider does either their own data center or they co-locate with someone else. There's a lot of big ones. If you drive down the I-10, you're going to see the I/O data center. It's massive. And then you'll see a lot of companies working on it. GoDaddy, for example, we have some co-located and some of our own entirely. So down on Buckeye Road, we have the old Sears Roebucker warehouse for the Southwest, and that's our data center. We've converted the whole thing. But we also share space with other companies in other data centers and locations. And the same is true for a lot of providers. Endurance opened up a really big data center in Provo. I believe it's their own, but you can read reviews on that.
I didn't know we time I had to really glad because the security was unbelievable. I felt like I was walking into a James Bond because there was this chamber that I had to be in by myself and these things started roaring around. It was crazy.
So typically when you walk in, there's a lot of security measures, and this is just to get into general areas, not anything that contains SSL encryption or anything like that. You walk in, you go through some dust-proof stuff. They blow air on you and make sure you're not bringing in anything extra. It's not quite like a hazmat area, but there's a lot of stuff in there. And a lot of physical security, digital security, all of that. So yes, most data centers, if it's from a reputable provider, the data center shouldn't be the problem. All of the VPSs, or a lot of them, offer a managed option. So you'll see managed services or managed hosting, not managed WordPress. We'll talk about that later. But managed virtual dedicated services. And that basically means, like you're in your apartment complex, you're still going to have that super that's going to go and install a new version of PHP for you. You're going to pay more for that kind of service, where they're going to come in and do some services for you. So it's typically an add-on, or they're sold as a separate type of plan. But fundamentally, there'll still be a VPS with that kind of service on it. Then there's dedicated hosting. So dedicated is now you moved up from the apartment and you own your own house. So it's effectively the same type of services as with the dedicated, or with a virtual dedicated. It's all yours. It's only great at what you make it. You're going to be constrained by the same things. You can still pick a control panel if you want. But now it's really just a physical box sitting there, and you're the only one on it. So you can use all the resources you want. The host will never call you saying you're using too much. They may still limit you on how many emails you can send, but that's just so you're not a spammer. But fundamentally, it's really all your resources to play with. If you need more, sorry, you probably got to buy another box. Any questions on virtual and dedicated? Yes, sir.
What's like typical price range with it?
All over the place.
I mean, starting.
So I personally have dedicated servers with a company out there. I have some with GoDaddy, some with not, that are at, I think I pay $80 for a starter type, but they go all the way up to thousands. And there's different providers that serve different markets at different levels. The ones I put up here are just some of the biggest known ones for kind of the commodity space. There's some really big ones that service primarily enterprises. Most of these companies don't really serve the high-end enterprise. And at that point, when you're deciding a dedicated server, if you're really getting to that kind of need, you may just look at co-location and buy your own server so you don't have to pay a monthly fee on it. So that's effectively the
That's kind of your that
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about backups a little bit later, but fundamentally, with virtual dedicated and dedicated, most providers are not going to give you backups for free. You're going to have to pay for them and possibly even set them up on your own. Shared hosting, you may get backups, you may have to pay for it as a service, depending on which provider you go with. So yes, management typically adds a backup layer that puts files somewhere else to a different location. So if that single server goes down, your files aren't all gone. So there's a lot of different things that they'll do. And then they'll update packages and help you out with technical problems. If your server goes down, the host will come in and help no matter what, but that extra level will require a management package, or maybe just a one-time fee to get that kind of help. All right, so who can tell me what is managed WordPress?
WordPress helps you with
Not you. Yes?
It's a server that's dedicated to
in part.
It's like a canvas that body will be.
That's accurate too. Let's give T-shirts now to this. So fundamentally, it's a set of services that are tailored to running WordPress. It's not just a server. There's different models, and we'll talk about that in this slide in a little bit. But fundamentally, it's meant to run WordPress well. It encompasses all of the different services that are required to run WordPress well. So with that, there's several companies that do it. WP Engine is probably the biggest. Pagely is the first. I want to make sure to say that. And there's a bunch of other companies. And fundamentally, even WordPress VIP at the extreme high end is effectively a managed host for WordPress. And you have Dreampress and Bluehost, and they're in a separate category, and we'll talk about why. From the security standpoint, the security can really be tuned for WordPress. It is meant to give WordPress the best environment to run it. We can tailor the environment for WordPress. When you buy these packages, they're typically limited around different things. They're not limited by the CPU and the RAM and the I/O. They don't have the word unlimited scattered around the page because it's really a different type of environment for a different kind of. The offerings are typically a little bit more expensive, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But you're going to be limited by the number of sites you can run. So we're on shared hosting. You can say you're going to run 5,000 WordPress sites in a single spot. Here you're going to be told you can run 1 for this feed, you can run 5 for this feed, you can run 25 for this feed. And the reason that's really the limiting factor is each container, each WordPress site is its own hosting account, effectively. It has its own resources that it's going to use. It's going to have its own CPU. It's also going to have the added benefit that if one site gets hacked, your other sites aren't affected. They could even be running on completely different hardware in completely different data centers in a different part of the world, depending on which provider you go. So there's a lot of added benefit to going with a provider like this if you're willing to pay a little bit more. The space has gotten interesting. So WP Engine, Pagely, Pressable, Bluehost, Dreampress, and WordPress VIP are typically the higher end. So for those that are not familiar with why Bluehost is on here, they just launched a managed WordPress offering about a month ago. iPage is another endurance brand that launched kind of an entry-level model. Prices are really starting to come down. We launched our version in January at WordCamp, and you'll start to see prices coming down just because of market pressure. It's been run by a couple companies primarily, focusing on this audience, and we all took notice. So what this also gives you is caching layers and other goodies, and I'll talk about them more in my next presentation. But fundamentally, you're going to get a lot more performance and a lot more stability, a lot more reliability, better visibility of your site. There's just a swathing of this. Yeah. So it depends on the provider. It is. Yeah. So for $29 a month, you get one site and 25,000 monthly visitors. Every provider defines what a monthly visitor is a different way as well. The WP Engine, for example, will define that as a unique IP in a 24-hour period, but you're also going to get hit with bots. So if Google comes and crawls your site, that's going to, every single Google spot that crawls your site is going to count against you. GoDaddy, we said that was silly. We said bots don't count against you. Some other hosts may do the same thing.
You can actually also enable CDN.
Yes.
As a way to insulate the traffic.
Sure.
As a customer WP Engine, reinforce that like very precisely because they track everything. So recently, since November, they started building overages. You can get pricing really quick.
Sure. So with CDN providers, typically these providers have good connections with them and will help you set them up. The catch with CDN, just to make it very clear, that plugin that we were looking at earlier, anything that uses cookies may go around your CDN. In order to be able to track how many pages a user has clicked, it may actually break through your CDN. So anytime you use plugins like that for the managed WordPress provider, be very careful of cookies. Be careful of sessions. So if your plugin uses PHP sessions, or if you're using Easy Digital Downloads, if you're using WooCommerce, those kinds of things, they're going to break through your CDN. Otherwise, that cart experience isn't going to work. So just something to keep in mind. If you're doing a static site that is very cacheable, it'll probably work really well, and you throw CDN in front of it, your monthly visitors is going to drop as to how much you're billed. But the second you use cookies, you're going to get penalized. So make note of that. I can talk more about that at length. Fundamentally, there's two different models for this. There's shared, and there's VPS backed. So what we have is at the top, those are all the providers that effectively went with a shared model, where it's still typically the grid type architecture where you have multiple servers backing your site, but it's still effectively on a shared type container. The bottom two, Dreampress and Bluehost, they charge more, but they will spin up a unique virtual dedicated server for you. Typically, it's a virtual dedicated server for the content and Apache or whatever it is, and another one for MySQL. I don't know how they pull off the cost to make it reasonable, but we'll see how that scales long term. Fundamentally, as far as performance, I don't know that you're going to see a big difference between which one you go with. In fact, my personal opinion is the shared model is used by more providers, and it's for a reason. I think it's going to scale better in the long term, because that container on a VPS is still fixed to what resources it can use. Yes, it can burst beyond that, but you're still physically housed on one server where that VPS is going to be able to extend. So your mileage may vary. Yes. So, thank you. But fundamentally, take a look at all the providers out there. Educate yourselves if you're looking at those things. All right. What is cloud hosting? Who can tell me what that means?
It's like Amazon, where your site is actually hosted on a series of multiple servers, really not just one server, right?
Yes, but not Amazon. So cloud is kind of a weird term. It's really started to mean a lot of different things to a lot of different companies. Cloud is the internet. That's cloud equals internet. You can write that. However, it started to morph into different things, and it really breaks down into 3 different components. These are typically really technical, but what you can say is underneath it all, the hardware itself is called an IaaS, infrastructure as a service. Just above that is called a PaaS. It's a platform as a service. So a platform sits on top of the infrastructure. So a platform can mean you're going to get a database, a storage, and a web server. All of those pieces together make a platform. And then on top of that, so things like Managed WordPress is actually a SaaS, because you're going to get a software as a service. You don't have to know how your website is run. You just know that you get a website. And it's scaled across different infrastructure and things like that. So on the right is a picture I pulled from Wikipedia that shows all the different components that go into these types of offerings. As far as what it really means, it's kind of a buffet style. You can eat as much as you want. You're going to pay more for it in most cases, but you're probably going to get a lot of resources available to you. It's kind of a weird model. So this is an image that Rackspace has on theirs. I think their fees is like $150 a month, and you can run a certain number of sites. I don't know. I've never tried them myself. We've used them before, but I don't know how good they perform. I know someone here has used Rackspace. So. Jeremy, yeah. Yep. Okay. So it might be a great offering. They claim to have 400,000 sites running. I don't. Fundamentally, what you end up getting is some possibly restrictive nature, just based on how they run their infrastructure. What this means is you're most likely going to be restricted to what programming languages you can run, because it's set up to run a specific environment. So you might be able to run PHP, but not anything else on that container. You also may have limited file access. So you may not get a file manager or SFTP access or FTP access or SSH or any of these things to be able to actually get to your content. Just because of how they have your data segregated into a container, you get a website. You don't get access to those things. You may also not be able to write files. So it may require you to push your data off to Amazon S3 or another service like that. You may not be able to write temp files that are shared across all your servers. You're going to have to write your sessions to your database instead of the file system. because of the way your site is run. If what I said doesn't make sense, I wouldn't go with this option, honestly. You also may get limited on your database size. So if your WordPress site gets too big, congratulations, now you have to pay more. And can you actually even update WordPress on it? With some of them you can. But if you click update, it's going to try to write files. That's not going to get replicated to all your other services that it runs on. So you're probably going to have to just upload a new copy of WordPress through their special interface and click the upgrade button so it upgrades your database. Some of them have figured it out, others haven't. So fundamentally, Managed WordPress is effectively the cloud type solution for WordPress people. There are a lot of companies that do this. Again, WordPress VIP has figured out, but if you ever worked with WordPress VIP, you'll know that there's a lot of these same type of restrictions in place. Plus, to get your code actually checked in, you have to have someone check your code, review it, make sure it works. So there's a lot of caveats to this kind of environment. But yes, Rackspace is in it. Google has their new solution. They say it works well with WordPress. I've never tried it. I mean, I've tried it, but I've never used it for a real site. Microsoft Azure didn't have PHP at the beginning, but now they say they support WordPress and things like that. And then Amazon Web Services is kind of in this space, but at the same time, kind of not. So they have a lot of the cloud offerings, but I wouldn't say they're really a SaaS, because you can't easily spread your sites across different nodes without a lot of technical knowledge. So that's why I said it's kind of. Any questions on this? Yes?
It seems to me though that there's also a lot of things. It seems
So the statement was, if you're going to get a burst of traffic, this seems like the right solution. It is, but at the same time, I would say that WP Engine, Pagely, ZippyKid, GoDaddy, Bluehost will all handle your site. And you won't have the same restrictions. So anyone with a managed WordPress provider, if you throw a CDN in front of it, it's kind of up to the host to make sure that handles, that you don't have to go and kind of cobble together a solution of your own.
Services on there. They can handle a large amount of traffic. You just won't necessarily be as speedy as you want. On the web, you really want to speed time to live, whatever. Basically,
Time to first load.
Responsive rates on the site. That's what it's going to locate more traffic. Download the site more or less. But if you're on Good Morning America and you're trying to sell a product to people, have your own plug-in that's running on there, you want that thing to run. That's what
So there's a lot of factors out there. So it is certainly an option. I'm sure it will evolve and become better. It's kind of the most nascent space aside from Managed WordPress. But Managed WordPress really builds on the principles that hosts have been doing for decades. So cloud is really starting to kick off. There's some really big developments happening. Red Hat is contributing a lot to it with open source initiatives. So it will get better over time. Hopefully the cost also gets better over time. All right, let's talk about safety and security. Keep you safe and secure. So what I have on the right is a simplified public consumable form of some of the security stuff that we have in play at GoDaddy. I'm hoping it's fairly similar across different providers. So at a fundamental level, it's meant to protect you from what is known and what isn't known to the best of its abilities. What you see at the top is all the devices that sit kind of on the network. So when the request comes in and hits, say, the provider's edge, all the way down to where it hits the server. So there's different prevention devices to make sure that DOS attacks don't happen, which are denial of service. There are things that inspect the traffic and make sure things like too many brute force attacks on WP login don't happen. There's a lot of devices that sit at the edge. And then there's security measures down on the server itself that will try to protect you as well. It also is set up, as you can see, as a multi-pronged approach. It's really set up like a funnel. So if you think of all the traffic coming in, gigabits and gigabits of traffic coming in, we can only filter so much at the very top layer without slowing the internet down. We have to gradually filter it down as it gets down into our networks. And sometimes we even cut it off a layer above what you see here, if it's big waves. After this, you have to keep in mind of what you're providing, what you're buying when you're getting a service. So shared and managed WordPress, for example, are going to give you security all the way down the stack, as I mentioned earlier. So you're going to get all the on-box security as well. So that's where you can get the really fine-grained control, and the host can actually protect you as much as possible for actual attacks against WordPress-specific things. If you get a VPS or a DHS, it's on you to make sure that box is secure at that layer. Again, with a managed type option with VPS or dedicated, you can pay for them to install this kind of software for you. So let's talk about shared hosting in general. What you're going to get is a decision between local and remote storage and local and remote databases. This is going to kind of vary how they do backups, but the host is really going to try to figure out a way. Again, make sure to run backups. I can't stress it enough, and I'll talk about it even more in this slide. Host will make sure that your site is monitored. So this is a graph I pulled last night when I was working on this slide. So for managed WordPress on GoDaddy, we actually monitor down. I could tell you how fast your site is running from our server, how long it takes in PHP, how long it takes in the database, how long it takes to actually make external requests to YouTube, or Flickr, or wherever else you're putting your requests from. So in the shared model, we could really monitor all the way through and see what's happening at every layer. And I'm sure every big provider, like I said in that long tail, anything in that front half is probably doing a good job of this kind of thing, and really making sure that your site is running as well as it can. From here, they work on patching. It is a huge pain, trust me. But you may hear some talk about shared hosting providers not doing patching. It's not true. Every shared hosting provider spends a lot of time and has an entire department dedicated to patching their servers and making sure they're secure. Again, when you have a VPH or dedicated, the patching is on you. So from here, you get system updates. So if a new version of PHP comes out that has vulnerabilities, the host is going to make sure that that's updated on the server. It's not going to happen immediately. It typically happens, like for us, on a monthly cycle. If it's something important like Heartbleed, we had the entire department working 24/7 to fix that. So it's one of those things where the shared host really takes the responsibility to make sure that your data is secure. Again, go with a reputable host, someone who hosts a lot of websites. That way they're going to be, at least have the staffing to be able to handle big crises like this. Backups, again, are an interesting one. Some shared hosting providers do it on managed WordPress. Most of them offer it for free. On shared hosting in general, some of them will charge you for restore, some of them will charge you to actually do the backups. So when you're looking through plans, really take a look and see what you're getting for your money, and read the reviews around their backup solutions, things like that. It depends per product. So there's different kinds of backups. So there's customer-facing backups, and then there's what we do to protect ourselves. So if a plane hits our data center, we have to make sure we have backups for us, not for you. Because if we lose every one of our customers, that's not such a good thing for us. So we have our disaster recovery backups. And for GoDaddy, we actually, for managed WordPress, for example, on our shared hosting, we look at that as something we need to provide. Now you may start to see different backup options for fee, depending on if you want backups longer than 30 days or longer than a certain period of time, or if you want your backups off-site. So if you don't trust us to do it. Honestly, with most shared hosting providers, if you're paying for a good provider, you shouldn't have to do your own unless you really need to for some specific reason. They're going to take care of it.
You say that as
Yes. So managed WordPress is effectively shared plus plus. Everything that a shared hosting provider would do, the managed actually does it a step further and make sure it's secure for WordPress. So on top of this, with managed WordPress, you typically get plugin blacklists and things like that. Now you may look at that as a negative, but it's also a positive. We have a lot of experience, we being the collective we as web hosting providers, in what causes problems for websites. So YARP at scale just doesn't work. On your little website, if you have a little one, it's going to work really well. But the second you start getting traffic, your database is going to fall over. So there's a reason we block it. You'll see similar across different providers. There's a lot of plugins that duplicate functionality. So backup plugins are typically not only top offenders as far as performance problems, just because they will continuously do backups and chew through resources, when the hosting provider already does it, but they also on occasion cause system problems and problems for your site. So a lot of providers block those in the managed space. On top of that, you're going to get WordPress core updates, for example. So if your provider tells you you don't have to update your WordPress, you should run and hide. Fundamentally, I know there are problems on occasion when updating WordPress. It could break your theme. So when 3.9 dropped, there was a whole series of themes that we saw that broke. But we couldn't roll back because of the benefits, especially with point releases. Those are the most important to update because those are typically the security ones. So WordPress 3.9.1 dropped today. We have it right now running overnight to update the managed WordPress environment. You'll probably see posts from other providers that manage WordPress providers also working to update your sites. Again, it's one of those things, if your site is fragile, you should really work to secure it because WordPress is going to be releasing more often. Matt has publicly said he wants it like Chrome, where you don't even know the version, it just gets updated constantly. So it's one of those things where your plugins and your themes should be as forward compatible as possible, and while that may be hard, it's one of those things of building quality software or buying quality software. It's hard to do. There's thousands and thousands. I think there's like 36,000 plugins that are software. Not all of them are going to work. So check the reviews, check what they're compatible with. Good plugin authors that maintain will have support forum responses, and then we'll also have compatibility set for 3.9, 3.9.1, whatever it is.
So, as I understand it, it sounds like you have to put us on.
So depends on the provider. So the way we look at it, and WP Engine is the same way, it's a plugin blacklist. So you can run any plugin you want as long as it's not these 15. So those 15 are just blocked. And again, typically we will provide you alternatives that will do similar things without either the performance impact or the security impact or anything like that. But it gives us a way to clean our environment and get rid of the shared hosting unstructured nature that exists. It's really to say, look, this is going to make your site work better. And then you may start to see other things crop up soon. You may start to see gray lists and things like that that we're working on. To say, look, this plugin, you can run it all day long, but it's going to impact your performance. And it's going to be up to you to make a choice if it's worth it or not. After that, you're going to get things like the Jetpack update that came out. So those not familiar, a few weeks ago, there was a big Jetpack vulnerability. So when this came out, we were working with Automatic weeks before it actually came out public to make sure we can update our entire environment before it actually hit the news. And managed WordPress providers can do that kind of thing. We can push out updates sweeping across the entire environment and force it to be compatible. So it's one of those risk-reward things, but it needs to happen. Otherwise, there was a big bug.
Just an email as you were talking.
Yep.
That's been upgraded on your site.
There you go. Yep. So managed WordPress providers will typically give you some sort of caching layer. You don't really need to worry about configuring it. It's probably taken care of for you by the host to make sure that it's compatible with WordPress, the most popular plugins and themes, and is meant to work. Sometimes you will run into problems. Contact the host. They can usually fix that pretty quickly. Yes? So a cache layer at a very fundamental level is you have a web server sitting there, and it has to take all your files and look everything up, compare them, pull content from your database, create your pages, and then serve it up to your users. That whole process is very expensive. The cache layer is basically, after the web server does its work, it gives it to this cache layer, and the cache just holds that whole page in memory. And the next time someone comes in and says, hey, let me see your site, instead of having to do that entire background work, it just gives them the page. So it stores it in a spot and serves it for a period of time that is appropriate for your site. And a lot of managed WordPress providers manage that for you. Same type of thing you can set up on your dedicated or virtual dedicated server. It's pretty complicated to do. I wouldn't recommend trying it, but certainly can.
So does that mean there's also some
Yes. So things like W3 Total Cache, Super Cache, on a lot of managed WordPress providers, they actually get blocked. So the reason we block them at GoDaddy is twofold. One, they're extremely confusing. And in some of our experiments, we've actually seen people make their sites slower using them. Just because of so many bells and whistles. Frederick Towns has done a wonderful job, but he's done it for everybody. So it's quite complicated to set up. The second reason is I feel it's my job to make sure your site is fast, not for you to have to concern yourself with making it fast. So it's really a philosophy thing. There are things you can do to make your site faster natively, but if you want to control that yourself, managed WordPress is probably not for you.
What about cache? Is there a way to
Yes. So all of the providers that use that, just like W3 Total Cache and Super Cache put a button that says Flush Cache, managed WordPress providers will put a button like that in. I'll show that later when I'm showing you data. Managed WordPress providers also do malware scans, security scans, a lot of extra things to make sure that your site runs secure. Again, when we know what you're running, that you're running WordPress with the latest version, we know how to properly maintain that environment. Make sure it's always running secure. Any questions on this? Yes?
So if you're managing security, what would the end user have to secure?
That's the next slide.
Oh.
Yep. Any other questions on this? That's a great question. It's perfect set. So what you should do. So if you went last week to Scottsdale, there was a great presentation by Dre from Security on what you should do. This is the condensed list. So fundamentally, keep your password secure. Don't use the word password or pass, like your local workstation. Keep it secure for your public environment. Make sure no one can get into it. I'm sorry? Don't use pass. In fact, when you try to set it up, we'll actually not let you do that. But then you can go back and change it, of course. It's up to the user or admin. So good providers will actually prevent that as well. Keep your software updated. So while managed WordPress providers, for example, will update core, updating themes and plugins is kind of a dangerous area. Just because people go in and instead of making child themes, they'll actually go and change 2012, 2013, 2014. And the second they push an update, your site breaks. So it's a little dangerous to update those for you. You can use tools like Infinite WP and Manage WP to make sure those get updated for you. We're talking about possibly making it an opt-in or an opt-out type solution, but it's kind of a dangerous area just because it could break people. And when we were first developing our solution, we had it turned on by default, and people immediately told us to turn it off. So same thing with plugins. It's dangerous. People go and tweak their plugins, or there's a certain version of a plugin that runs on your site, but you update it and it'll break. So it's dangerous to update those. Core, we figure, is our problem. Plugins, we really need our users to implement. So keep your software updated as best you can. As far as the site itself, if you're setting up multiple users to use it, really configure their profile to only have what they need. You probably don't want some author on a post to be able to install a plugin for you. Really lock that down to make sure that the right people are doing the right things on your site. And if a host doesn't provide the backups, make sure to do them. It is the most important thing you can do. I've heard too many stories, and I've seen too many people crying that they lost their site, that they spent years and years building up. I was just working with a client on my own consulting stuff where he didn't do backups, and there's nothing you can do at that point. You can go into like archive.org and see what it looked like 2 years ago. That's about as close as you're going to get. Hosts sometimes do some behind-the-scenes stuff. You may be able to ask them nicely to pull their tape backups if they still have them. But fundamentally, make sure that your host does it or do it yourself. Any questions? All right. Thanks. Oh, yeah.
Is there a unified tool, I guess, to benchmark or test all the hosts in a unified way?
Is there a unified tool to benchmark hosts? So there is a way. It is not free, typically, or not free in terms of time. So you can use tools like Siege or Apache Bench to send volumes of requests. There's Blitz.io, which is a solution that you can use to send traffic. As far as actually performance testing over time, you can use tools like Pingdom and set up monitors for all your hosts. There's free versions of Pingdom-like solutions out there that will test your site over time. As far as benchmarking, I would say the Blitz, Siege, and Apache Bench are probably the top ways, unless you have really expensive load generation tools. As far as comparing across hosts, there's a lot of studies that have been done. There's a lot of bad reviews out there around different hosts where they don't use scientific means. So if you're, I would say, unless you're really dedicated to doing it yourself, find a good review that talks about their methodology of how they tested it, check the time span that they tested it, and the most important thing is make sure they actually tested the same thing. So if you have, a Bluehost running WordPress 3.2 with Gravity Forms, and then you have a GoDaddy running 3.9 with Contact Form 7, and they're saying one is faster than the other, that doesn't really make sense. It's not going to give you an accurate picture. So make sure they use the proper approach and describe how they did it. If you're going to do it yourself, follow the same type of pattern. Any other questions? Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
We'll be right back with Felix in just a second. Now it's just time for idea swap. So shake your brain out a little bit from the hosting. And what great plugins or tools or resources or whatever have you found this month that you want to share? Or what do you have a question and you'd like an idea on? Yes?
I feel like I'm the last one of the party, but I started using LastPass, and wow, I'm an addict. It's awesome.
LastPass, if you haven't started to do it. Yeah, I would agree. Although I've actually gone to 1Password now. It's a little bit more expensive, but the user experience is real nice. So let's pay for it.
Locked out of LastPass. I don't like it. It's a house that screwed up some stuff. Otherwise, I'm looking. It's my fault.
Most of them seem to think that it's like a word about that too, especially when it says to update this. Update it.
It's stupid. Just keep pulling stupid things back. When that moving out. And there are ways that still have loading and do stuff too, and I just knew that. So I started using that.
So did you say, so you just lost that first password, the main password? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, the way it's set up, it makes sense. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Still being the back. Two things you can do, like anytime password,
Thanks for the heads up.
LastPass or some other type of password manager is a must because the host that I use will not let me select a bad password, and it won't let me change the password either to a not secure password. So it's like you need to be using good passwords. It's a good thing they're making us do this. And whenever you do that, then you got to have a way to manage it. Go.
It'll be pretty boring here. I'm going to say WordPress 3.9.1 just dropped, and you've got your plugins. There's a lot of security enhancements, and specifically enhancements around plugins. So back your site up, update those plugins. And like the most common plugins that we use a lot, is get up to.
Okay.
3.9.2 is going to drop in about a week.
Oh, really? Wow.
They pulled out 10 features from 3.9.1 to
Okay.
get it out faster.
Okay.
There's more coming.
Okay. All right. Update. Mark.
Limit login attempts. I think it's
Limit login attempts. Yep.
It's saving my. It's saying. I've got a few different sites up where it's saying that somebody tried to log in with 24 times it blocks it out. I'm surprised how often that's happening.
Yeah.
And it's nice to know, just nice to know that it's going on, I guess. You know, I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
But I have a question about that. Is there a better way to do that? Other than that, it's really protecting yourself. Kind of like a way to have a shoe drop at some point. It's like someone's obviously trying to do it.
Good question. You want to take it? Sure. Go ahead.
So from a host perspective, like that slide I showed, there's a lot of measures in place that are being blocked that you have to know about. In fact, we did 2 trillion blocks last month. So those are the things you don't see that got to limit login time. Managed WordPress providers, I think WP Engine and we actually force install limit login times on the website. So it is definitely a good solution. There's a couple other ones out there. There's WordFence, which is not bad. My only problem with them for managed providers is they set cookies. So you're helping yourself and you're hurting yourself at the same time. But limit login attempts is definitely good. Things like there's anti-spam bee and comment spam things. Those are also attacks that should work.
I have a question about what you
Okay.
So there's a lot of sites that don't have it, and I don't use SSL, but I'm wondering if you're still affected by SSL because there's still times during your admin updates where you're doing plug-in downloads, and so there's got to be some kind that you share. And also there's gravity comes in much new IDs and insights in here. And I'm wondering if maybe possibly you're affected by that.
So Heartbleed affected, the technical answer is it affected anything with OpenSSL that ran between certain versions. And it only affected things that were on SSL. The catch is a lot of things that you leverage. So MailChimp probably talks over SSL. They had to make sure to go and patch their systems.
And then, right now, is your site also in jeopardy because you share things that SSL might?
If they were vulnerable, then
So then I would say that almost any WordPress site that's using WordPress.
So, not exactly. So, yes, you should certainly update your passwords always. But that being said, the real vulnerability with SSL is if your site had SSL, they could read the SSL keys. It doesn't have anything really to do beyond that, where like, the WordPress admin login credentials, those are a slightly different thing. So it's traffic that was sent over SSL that could have potentially been read. If you're not running SSL, then that traffic would always be read.
Wouldn't you have to send your admin information over to someplace?
So if you don't send anything like that, which you're probably only sending some unique key that they gave you to connect to MailChimp.
That's true. And you have a
So that piece is what was sent over SSL, not your actual WordPress login credentials.
but there's those.
But, I mean, that ID is only used in that
context,
so.
Not all.
So the real onus is on those providers to have updated their servers, or not everyone's affected by it. Again, it was only a specific technology, which is a very widely used technology, but not everyone uses it. And a lot of providers patched it very quickly before there were a lot of public exploits. The bug has been out there for like 7 years, so no one knows what the true impact of it is.
It does sound like you're
You should always update.
Okay. All right.
All right, Lori.
I've heard that the good, like best practices is to clear out plugins and themes that you don't need, do some housekeeping. So with that in mind, should there be one like 2014 or 2012 or something there just in case you need a second theme, or you should wipe those out if you're not using them?
I think that's probably personal preference on, I mean, I can tell you what I do. I clean out everything theme except one. Like I will leave 2014 or I'll choose one, I'll pick one. Because if you're ever troubleshooting your theme, you need one default WordPress theme in there to be able to do a quick revert to check and see. So I always leave one of the default themes in and clean everything out. That's my personal practice. I don't know. I mean, theoretically, you could clean them all out. And when you need to go, you could download You would not recommend that. Okay, good to know.
So as a hosting provider, if you call into support, and you're saying I have problem X on my site, my theme looks wrong, the first step they were going to do is to revert your theme, disable your plugins. So if you don't have another theme, it's going to take that much longer to support. 2012, 13, 14 are probably good choices to leave. They get updated frequently. They're managed by a big organization. I would disable or delete, rather delete, not disable, anything that was done by third parties that you don't use, that you should have.
Okay. And out of 2012, 2013, 2014, is it just preferable to do the most current? 2014?
Yeah. It's really going to be for troubleshooting purposes, so
Okay.
at least one. I could have to look, but I'm guessing the majority of our sites have all of them.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Other tips, tricks, questions?
Third-party newsletter, companies, something about phone address that was from someplace different. Yahoo wasn't accepting it. Email wasn't accepting it. I use newsletter company.
Right, right, like a MailChimp or a Constant Contact.
Yeah, this is like opening that all my subscriptions and stuff out of it. And I would say that 80% of my sales emails are Yahoo, all the payments, and the rest of them are contact. Anyway, when I'm sending out my newsletter, 95-90% of it doesn't go through because my phone address using the phone address. I now can change the standard at the beginning of April. So I don't know if MailChimp is like one of the options that
Joe, take this away. You're the newsletter guy.
Yeah, in a nutshell, Yahoo experience the best attack. A large phishing attack, which attacked other users for spamming purposes. So they enable the technology called DMARC. DMARC is a way of authenticating it at the server level. No, I'm just explaining so everyone knows. So, in a nutshell, it's always a good idea if you're sending from address and you own that domain. So it's run that mail server, and or you have SPF properly on that domain. Allows another server to send mail on behalf. But Yahoo prohibits that unless you're one of their.
Right. So basically,
But they did that kind of quickly. They didn't warn everyone. They just said,
they just did it. They just did it. So what I did is I removed from my regular email put in phone address. That my particular company is called Minds That Are Voted, and what they're doing in their hosting environment, because they host all the newsletters, is that they're going to give everybody space so that they'll have a set up and
Yeah, like a supplement.
yeah, so that is, but it could work with also effective connection.
It would affect everyone because it's an email protocol like the AOL starts to turn this on.
Right.
They just turn that on as well. So
Right. So
we're starting to do this for email security.
Right. But I gotta say that when it first happened, it's like really no, as we always are surprised. But I'm also involved in email user, and I was getting my email account spoofed and hacked, and supposedly it's supposed to be like really easy to do that. Anyway, now I'm noticing that incoming not getting junk.
It's a continual fight.
Yeah.
A continual fight
I would
against
say
spam.
all the major ESPs, MailChimp, Constant Contact, all of them are very good.
But normally, if you pay a subscription for that, you don't, phone address usually is not from the mail.
Right, so yeah.
And so it would affect a lot of people between the news like that. Because I used to have, way back when, first had the first website, I had my email on my website. And then when they started strengthening it, of course I got rid of that. And then we started using Yahoo. It's very, very new to me. So now Yahoo made me, they did this change that affected the newsletter.
But anyway, I just figured that probably later also how WordPress people do using third-party.
Sure, yeah. Good, thanks for bringing that up. All right, so the next, I'm gonna hand it back over to Felix again. And so Felix kind of talked to us a little bit about just hosting in general. And now that's gonna kick off. We're gonna have people talk about the different hosts. We're actually gonna have representatives. At the WordPress Meetup group, we really try hard and protect you guys as participants from a whole bunch of salesy pitch. But in this instance, we wanted the hosting providers to show us, okay, show your product. So here's the chance to show us what it's all about. So I think Felix did a great job kind of laying out what is hosting, what are the different options, you know, here's the facts, and now it's time for them to show us what GoDaddy has been working on for quite a while, which is their own managed hosting for WordPress. Next month, we're going to have a different host that will also show their goods off. And so we are not showing favoritism to any. We are wanting you guys to be able to get a sampling of all the different things that are out there. But this is going to kick us off with GoDaddy right here, locally from Arizona.
Hi, my name is Felix. So we talked a lot about what managed WordPress is. So let's show you what we think it is. Just a quick note, I will post my slides. They're already up on SlideShare, and I'll tweet them out in case you want to just grab the slides from the last presentation. So this is our managed WordPress package. So we've been developing for quite some time. We put a really big effort on WordPress and specifically envisioned that it should be a managed WordPress type provider. These two individuals work with me, and we have actually a team of 11 working on the product. So it's really a big effort to make sure that we service the WordPress community well. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump into the product, and I'm going to show you what it looks like and what it is to be a user on the product. So I'm going to sit for this one. All right, so what this is basically is this is our control panel login spot. So you don't see, like we talked about, cPanel or Plus. This is something that we developed just to be able to take you in quickly and get into your WordPress. Because fundamentally, you're not really supposed to be setting up all sorts of weird things. You're just using WordPress. So our goal was to get you in as fast as possible and give you the best experience you can. So I'm going to log in as my own account. And what we've made is effectively a series of setup tiles where you can see the sites that you're running. That's it. You don't have a bunch of options. You don't have a lot of everything. You can get into WordPress, or you can set up a new site. So I'm going to click Setup, and when you buy one of the larger packages, you get multiple setup tiles where you can actually go ahead and set up multiple sites for yourself. So if you're managing multiple sites for yourself or clients, you can set them all up as individual instances. And like I mentioned in the last session, these are all individual containers where one doesn't affect the other. So they each have their own resources that they can use. If you're getting a lot of traffic on one, it doesn't impact your other. So yes? No, that's been since launch day. So what we did was, this is kind of the first of its kind in the managed WordPress space and in the hosting space where you can, with one click, migrate your WordPress site. Now there are a lot of plugins out there that will help you with migrations. We figured it should be baked into the product from day one. So when you set up your product, you get a choice. If you're going to migrate a site, you get taken to this page. You're going to get set up on a temporary domain. You get this domain for yourself forever for free. This is so you can set up your site and start without having to worry about figuring out the right name long term. And you also don't have to change over from your live site. So if you have felix.com, you don't have to remove your site to migrate it over. It's going to migrate it over. You can play with it on our platform. You don't like it, you can delete the site, cancel the product, whatever you want. Your live site is going to stay online. If you do like it, then you switch your domain over and you're up and running. We ask you for your site info. So this is to actually install a plugin. We have to install a plugin in order to be able to download your database. There's no way to access your database other than through within WordPress, or unless you have, you give us your credentials and the host allows it. We'll also ask for FTP credentials. This is to be able to pull out all the files. So it's really these 6 pieces of information, and we're going to migrate your site for you. The time it takes varies anywhere between half an hour to 8 hours, depending on how fast your hosting provider is, because we're naturally limited by whatever they can do. And it also depends on how big your site is, how many pictures, how many videos you have, because we have to pull all that content over. But typically, we've been seeing it take about 2 hours. If you don't want to migrate and you want to start new, you click Create a New WordPress Site. You can pick a domain on your GoDaddy account. You can also pick the temporary domain and just get started quickly. Or if you use Enom or some other provider, you can type in a domain here. We're going to tell you what your A record is that you should set on that provider, and then away you go. So we'll set it up with a temporary domain. Username, like we mentioned earlier, you can't use admin. Just the best security principle. There's a lot of brute force attacks, and most of them just try the word admin to log in. So pick something else. Yes, you can go back after you set this up and change it back to admin. Please don't. And then a secure password. We make sure it's between 7 and 20 characters long. We just try to enforce best practices. Again, you can change it afterwards, but don't make it something simple. And then you click Finish. And at this point, we go off and we're setting up your WordPress site. We created, if you're familiar with Google's story of send, we created a story of setup. So it kind of guides you through what we're actually doing in the background. The whole process is supposed to take somewhere around 30 to 40 seconds to actually set up your site. And then you're going to be in your WPF. So it's doing a bunch of magic behind the scenes, actually setting up the WordPress account, laying down Jetpack, laying down all the standard plugins and themes that come along with it that Automatic puts in or WordPress.org puts in. And at this point, it goes in and also, if you set up a site on a domain, it's going to update your DNS for you, so it automatically points to the system. It's going to set up everything basically required to get your site up and running. Any questions so far?
Yes.
With the migration, does it show you a progress reader if you're migrating a site?
It currently does not. So once your migration succeeds, you will get an email notifying you that it's done. If it fails, you will get a notification email. That's something we have to implement still, but it will show in this interface whether it succeeded or failed. Yes? So we take care of all of that. So every site gets its own table prefix automatically that is unique to your site within the entire environment. You can after the fact if you want. So you'll have access over SFTP to change it, and then you have access to PHPMyAdmin to change that as well if you really want to. We also pull salts and generate unique salts for you. So if you want to change, by all means, it doesn't matter to me. It's just more work for you. Yes. Mm-hmm. So that is information you would get from your current hosting provider. So it would always be FTP or SFTP.
But it's basically the information that you log in. Your current
It's where you log in to see the files. Yes. So it's a file level access.
So it should have the username.
It's the address and the username and password to log in. So at this point, at this point you can see that I got dropped in directly into WordPress. It's effectively a standard stock WordPress install. We've done a couple things to make it easy, and I'm going to run through what that is. So we've installed this thing called GoDaddy Quick Setup. So here's your second plugin demo today. So this is the plugin that I mentioned. So Kurt Payne and myself actually wrote this plugin quite some time ago, and this is effectively a way to help users get started quickly with WordPress. So we're going to click Get Started, and I'll kind of just show you what we've done. So the first thing we do, and this is kind of modeled after some site builders, we're going to ask you what kind of site you want to build. So say you're building a company site. You click Select, and we've actually partnered with CyberChimps and had them create 12 custom themes, premium themes, on their CyberChimps framework. And off of that, we actually had them create 4 individual skins for each theme. So you really get a premium experience out of the box for free with your credit account. You can certainly change themes later. You can install anything you want in the community. This is just to help users get started with something. And the goal of this is really to get you 90% of the way there in about 5 minutes. So I'll select this theme right here called the Mark Eye. Don't ask me how that name came up. It was interesting. And at this point, we're going to ask you a series of questions about what you want your site to have. So, hi Meetup. If you want contact information, you put your info. And what this is going to do when it asks you for this information is that it's actually going to build out the contact form. And if you hover over the eye, it'll tell you what we're going to do. We're actually going to install contact form 7, a really simple CAPTCHA, and the comprehensive Google Maps for you. And we're actually going to wire it all up to actually get your site started. You put in all your social network information, anything you want. You don't want to provide something, say you don't want an About Us page, you simply click Remove and it's not going to add that page. You can immediately start a gallery if you want. You can upload a few images. Again, it's very simple start, but it'll get you some content on your page. You can at least feel like you have something to start off with, instead of starting from scratch. You can create as many custom pages as you want. So if you're a restaurant and you want to add a menu page, you simply type menu, you put some basic text, and then using WordPress itself, you're going to go in and add your menu and your images and things like that. We'll also help you start your blog right away. You can type in your first blog post, and this will set up a blog section on your site. And if you want to add more custom pages, you can. Lastly, we'll integrate some social buttons for you. If you don't want them, uncheck the boxes, but we'll, on the bottom of your posts and pages, add links for people to be able to share them on their social networks. We'll also install a series of additional plugins for you. So if you want to set up your Google Analytics really quickly and you have your UA, just punch it in here and we'll set it up. These are all third-party open-source plugins from the Codex that we just pre-install for you. That's kind of best of breed. So things like Yoast, WordPress SEO is going to get installed for you, just because we consider that something that really helps a lot of users. If you don't want any of these, you can uncheck the box. After that, you simply click Publish, and we're actually going to go out, download that theme, set up the content, install all the plugins, wire it all together, and present you a site. Now, all of these themes are completely responsive, so they'll work on your mobile phone just as well as they work on your computer. And they're really set up to make it easy for you to build your site and get started. Yes.
So a disclaimer about
yes. Yes.
Will it actually like overwrite posts?
It will overwrite absolutely everything, the way it's set up right now. So the quick setup is really to get started. All of your options that you entered in the wizard will be maintained if you run it multiple times, but it truly will overwrite everything in your WordPress install. We have a feature request where it won't, but that's something that we're going to do later. We're actually going to expand this in a lot of interesting ways in the future. So stay tuned for that. But all I had to do was this, and now I have a WordPress site. I can scale it to different sizes. It'll condense, and this is what it'll look like on mobile. So effectively, this site was built out. I now have a location page that shows a map. So the very underpinnings of a site have been done just that quickly. So that's something that we really envision that we want our users to be able to have. We've talked to advanced designers that said this will help them solve their problems quicker and get into a site for their clients. Or if you're starting off, you can use this, build a site very quickly, and then improve it over time. Every site is a constant work in progress. Otherwise, this plugin, if you don't want to use it, you simply click Dismiss at the top and never have to see it again. Fundamentally, WordPress here is effectively just stock WordPress. We have a couple things built in. So like we talked about earlier, there's a flush cache button. You click that, it will actually go out and clear that caching layer and a bunch of other things. It'll show you that it's succeeded. Otherwise, your site will work quickly and work pretty well. Any questions so far? The GoDaddy settings is a link actually back to the data. And what I'll show you here is actually where I wanted to go next. Is there another question on the previous part?
Yeah, once you click you either go back to that you make the pages updated?
No. That plugin has done its job, effectively. At this point, you use stock WordPress to do your work.
So if you think
Yes, there is. There certainly is, and it's something that we're talking about addressing. The challenge is how do you play nice with WordPress and make it less complicated? Play nice meaning with the community and things like that. It's a complex piece of software that we're still trying to figure out how to properly position. There's a lot of users, but it is complicated. So when you go through Quick Setup, you can actually run Quick Setup again, just by going back under the Tools menu, and you can select all of these settings again. You can pick a different theme, and everything that you type in here will be retained. But if you want to go back through and actually change the content on those pages after you've done more work, then you really need to go back into the posts and pages and make your alterations from there. But you'll see we've created all of these pages for you, at least a baseline for you to get started with.
So you show you the other from the quick setup?
Currently, it does not. Currently, it shows you the ones that you selected. We do have plans to put them directly in here as well, but we haven't. But you can go through and run it again. And if you really want all of them, I'll have to reinstall them for you. Yes, you can. So it's really just an open source plugin. You can configure it through whatever options they allow. I don't know the specifics of it, how it figures, but it's probably just a short code in your page. So you would modify that just like you would a regular WordPress site.
Go back to GoDaddy settings. Go back to the secret.
So there's no secret on this. Like I mentioned earlier, the real goal of this was to cut away all the cruft of control panel experiences and get you directly into WordPress as quick as possible. So we have a settings button here, and with the settings button, you can add domains. So if you want to set up additional domains on your site. Sorry?
How do I go?
Click on the database tab, click on the PHP admin link, and log in. You can look at the database through that. Same thing with SFTP. You can just log in and browse around your files. And what we do is we lock down the core files of WordPress, and that's so we can maintain them and make sure they're up to date. Sure. You can certainly do them. You can install WP Debug. You can install most plugins. There is a list of plugins that are on the blacklist that's available on our support.GoDaddy section. And it's a fairly generous list. What was that?
Is there any way to get back into the NC panel? Because a lot of times I like to look at stuff inside the code.
Do you have an example?
Stats that are good. Sometimes.
So we don't provide stats through the package like this. It is something that we're thinking about. But realistically, the more stuff you put in, the slower your experience gets. You can leverage third parties like Google Analytics and other solutions to monitor stats. We will probably be adding some information, but most managed providers give you the baseline of that. And it's really up to third parties that are client side instead of putting the load on the back end.
Yeah.
Currently, we allow one FTP user. It is something that we're looking at adding more.
Because I have a case for the same site.
Fair enough. So it is certainly a great feature. We do look to implement that. We don't have it. Yes?
What feature requests? Where should it go?
You can send them to me. You can send them to the general GoDaddy support section, but send them to me. They'll get done fastest. So fundamentally, you'll have a backup section in here. So since I just set up the site, there aren't any backups yet. We run them nightly, but if I go to an existing site that I have on here, you'll see that I have backups available. And you can restore your database and your content separately because sometimes you don't want to restore both at the same time. So you can select files. We'll show you all the backups that we keep for 30 days. You simply click, and it will restore that back into your account.
Selected restore it.
Not currently, it will restore the entire site. As far as beyond that, so this side I have SSL. SSL is a new feature we just launched. Actually, between the last time I showed this off in Scottsdale and now, we've implemented SSL. It's not quite in the interface, but we have users already running it. I wouldn't call it it's past beta, but it's not yet kind of widely publicized, but we do have SSL available on this platform. So with SSL right now, we're giving away free dedicated IPs if you get an SSL. We'll support all SSL types from GoDaddy, so you can also do that. And then we really make it easy so you can play around with your sites. Since I set up a site with a fake domain name, I can go in here, click remove. It removes the site, gives you back a credit, so you can spin up a new site again. So we're going to be working on staging sites, and with that it'll have support to do cloning of sites, and then also pushing changes from within staging back to prod. I don't know how far is staging. It's the end of this month.
You really want to emphasize that, like,
we're working on it. Our friends at Media Temple implemented it, and we're going to be doing it. Staging? Staging, we don't formally have it, but if you want to have a similar experience, so the big difference with staging is when you get a site, you're going to have an extra credit effectively available to spin up another site for yourself. There will probably be limitations, like you can't apply a real domain name to it. But if you buy one of the upper plans, you're going to get multiple sites as it is. You can use those like staging sites for now, and then at the end of this month, we'll have it. So when we do give staging, it will use that temporary domain as the staging domain.
when we get copy done, well, when we have copy of WordPress site, we'll actually put that on the site on the
Push it back.
Yes, you'll be able to do both.
yeah, you'll be able to go back to the
Yes, absolutely. So when you click settings and you go to the database tab, this is the PHP management. And then you'll just log in with the credentials. You have to show password. Log in with those. So this is really the experience. We really try to take away all of the confusion around it and just make a very seamless, simple interface. We're going to be expanding this a lot. The product is only 3 months old as far as public availability. So we have a long list of features that we want to implement. But we really wanted to put out a quick solution as far as performance, not how fast we get it. We've been working on it for quite some time. Yes. Sure.
Well, I'm just positive. So I looked at so I've been on this looking at because I love those things. So
Thanks. Any questions I can help answer about what we've done?
It's not like it's
Currently, it does not yet. You can. I'm not going to advise you to do it, but theoretically, you can. You can go into WP config and make the changes required to enable network. But the only thing you're going to lose is the ability to flush cache, and that's primarily the reason we haven't done it. We haven't extended our system plugin to support flushing cache across all of your domains, subdomains, and things like that, and just making sure the experience is right. Multi-site, even on managed WordPress providers, is typically a very high-end feature. So with WP Engine, you have to pay $100 a month and up to get it, and other providers are kind of in that same boat, where it's more complicated to host in a managed environment just because of the variability. So it is something we have on our backlog to do. You can enable it, but I would say right now we're not quite ready for it.
You guys have to offer phone support
Yes.
or lowest level?
Yes. So phone support, you're gonna pick up the phone and you're gonna get someone either in Gilbert, about 3 miles up the road here, Tempe, Scottsdale, or Iowa. So those are our call centers. We offer 24/7 support with all of our products. We've also launched live chat just recently. And we're actually trying to do away with the email support because of how bad that experience has typically been. So we're really focusing on the live chat and phone support models. Just to make sure you get a response faster. Because otherwise you could wait days for email support going back and forth. It's easier just to pick up a phone or chat with them. But yes, support is definitely a core tenet. And we're working very hard to improve how they support managed WordPress and how deeply they go into WordPress as well. So I would expect changes on that front pretty soon.
So all customers
They will at least field the initial questions, but there is a department that's called Professional Hosting Services that handles the hosting products. The support is really broken down into there's hosting and then there's the other products. When you dial in, it'll ask you if you're calling about a hosting support issue, and it should route you to the right people. Now, if call volumes are really long, it may route you to other people to see if they can address your problem, but you certainly get to the right hosting people. And we're always looking to up talent. I mean, we have a large support staff, and it's WordPress is a very complex beast, so it's hard to find support that will help you with things like specific plugins or specific themes. But general support will definitely be there, and we'll be improving that. Cool. Any other questions I can answer? All right, well, let me know if you do. Thanks so much for your time. A special? So we handed out a flyer with a special that you could try out the product for $1 per month. And with that, if you sign up for a year term, you actually get a free domain. So. Yep. So give it a shot. Let us know what you think. We've come to these meetups pretty often, so I'd love any feedback, good or bad. The only way we're going to make a better product for you. Thanks a lot.